Well, now I want to turn to Eric Hasselhorst, who owns Rockin' Farm Toys, for his build along of his truck. So Eric, welcome.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks, everyone. Hey, big kudos to everybody. You guys are just amazing. Just watching everything that you're doing is just stunning. You guys are light years ahead of the diecast world. I can tell you that. Just fascinating to see what you do and how complex it is. Anyways, so we kind of talked about the evolution of the truck that I'm doing. It is an actual physical truck, about 90 miles straight east of me, maybe 100 miles. And it's going to go out on the harvest trail. A custom harvester named Frederick Harvesting owns it. I'm doing 2 more so he can complete his collection of the equipment that he uses in his operation. So when we left, I kind of explained all the parts that we're using. I want to just talk briefly about how I clean these parts and everything like that. The whole truck is 3D printed, less the axles and the windscreen. Everything else is 3D printed. It's resin, and I have it all made at facfox.com, FACFOX.com in China. And for what I'm doing, this has been a wonderful, wonderful product for me. So this is basically the same material that our build-along cab was made out of. This is just a generic resin, nothing fancy about it. The way I prep this stuff for painting, all I do is wipe it down with isopropyl alcohol and then let it air dry so all the alcohol evaporates off, wipe it down, make sure there's no fabric fibers or anything stuck to it. And then I prime and paint. Primer will usually be a discount store type primer. Seems like I have really good luck with that. And then I've used everything from discount store paint to automotive aerosol. I get a lot of this is a touch-up bottle. A friend of mine has a semi. And anyways, long story short, I made a gift of that semi for him. And this is the exact color of the truck that they're running. And then the truck that we did was actually made, so this shade of silver, you'll see on the bed, was mixed here at Napa, here in Dodge City. And then the color of the rig for the Frederick Harvesting blue, or kind of blue, whatever you want to call it, was mixed by the company that repaints their trucks for them. I happened to be passing through that town where the through the auto body shop is, and they have paint mixing on site. So they mixed me up a little can. So everything I've done so far, I mean, those are the kinds of paints that I'm using on all of my 3D products. That's basically what everything I do calls for. So that's what I use. And I really haven't deviated from that in any way, really. The wheels for the semi, those were also clear, white resin, and I shot those with chrome. Actually, I shot those with chrome, with Molotow chrome. I put this through my airbrush. If you happen to have a pen, you can use a pen. I don't think it's quite as clean as using Molotow through your airbrush, but the chrome really turns out. And I will tell you one thing about using facfox.com. Let me get me a part here off the parts rack. You can get your parts electroplated there, which means you can make chrome looking bumpers. Look at that. This is the same resin that this was made out of, but I had it electroplated, which is an additional cost. And you can see, look at that. That is gorgeous. Anyways, I'm having lots of parts chrome plated. You can do chrome, gold, and black at the same company. And if I were to do a whole bunch of these trucks, I would have the wheels electroplated just to take the step out of using Molotow. Well, I dropped it, but using Molotow. So that's the painting process that I've used. I'll just go back with clear coat after I do decals and do things like that. I'm sure all of you are doing that in your model trains and things like that. So I'll clear coat it, and then once clear coat's secure, start assembly, which is what we'll do now. So I'm going to turn my phone around just a moment.
Eric, let me ask you a question. If I wanted to paint my truck the same color Can I get a small can of that paint? Where do I get the paint you're using?
Great question. Just a second. Let me flip you around. So, okay, so I have a video on YouTube. If you go to rockinhtv.com, that's my YouTube channel. And if you search how to get custom paint, I go through the exact process I do every time I get custom paint. Most of the time, 90% of the time, I'm going to rdpaint.com in Arkansas. And I have the website in that video. And so I don't have an example here, but if any trucker wants me to do a replica of their rig, I ask them for the last 6 digits of their VIN. And then I call a Kenworth, a Peterbilt, Volvo, Freightliner, whatever dealer, and I say, I need paint codes for VIN number V, 67841. They give me a paint code. I email the paint code to R&E, and they send me this, which is 2 ounces of paint matched to this. This was a Kenworth T660 that my friend bought. Or this happened to be an old Chevrolet truck. That is kind of that tomato red, if you're familiar with the old C65 70s. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's how I do it. And I haven't really done it on a vehicle, like a car or a pickup or anything, but I'm sure the process has got to be similar. You just get the VIN, call up a dealer, and then you get the paint code. And then, like I said, I'm using R&E paint. They charge me, this right now has gone up a little bit. This is $20 to my door here in Dodge City, Kansas. So, and then, like I said, you go to Napa here. I don't know if Napa's wherever you guys are living, but Napa will occasionally mix a little paint for me. This was just a generic silver, and that I just needed a generic silver to have on hand. And I don't know, it's like $30 for a half pint. So,
okay, thank you.
I've heard O'Reilly Auto Parts will also do some custom mixing of paint. I haven't used them. We have one here in town. I just haven't used them.
Okay.
All right, cool. All right, let me get you back and we'll get going. We have 7 o'clock here. All right. Okay, so here are the parts. I went ahead and added the decals. This particular bed has wheat decals down the side. These were printed, actually paid a graphic artist on Fiverr.com to make me the wheat. Fiverr.com at the time, I got the wheat made for like $10 or something. Then I resized it in Microsoft Publisher, printed it, and then here they are. And then cut them out, put them on. These decals right here, these were made by circuscitydecals.com or Circus City on Facebook. And those were resized and then, obviously I just put them on there. Here's another wheat decal. There's a little bit of detail paint that will have to be on this truck in the next lesson, because right here, this should be chrome. This should be red. And then the headlights will be chrome, as well as this grill area and a small red emblem right here. But I do all that stuff at the very end. And I don't recall what kind of lights are needed on here. But anyway. Okay, so let me show you so these wheels are the devil for me, because it seems like they're either too loose or too tight whenever I'm doing 3D printed wheels. If I could find a soft resin of some sort, I would use that instead, or a rubber tire that would match the proper size, I would use that instead. But nevertheless, if you're using these wheels, they're tight, but if you're somewhat gentle, they're pretty snug, but you can get them to seat real quick like that. These front steer wheels. Oh, and this is the Molotow Chrome. If you've never used Molotow Chrome, I always shoot mine like today. If I get a project up, I'm gonna shoot it today, but then I'm not gonna touch it for 3 days and let it get good and cured out. Because if not, if you go in here and touch this too soon, it seems like it's soft and you'll leave fingerprints in it, and that's not what you want. But that's how the Molotow Chrome looks through an airbrush if you're not familiar with it. The front wheels are pretty sloppy. You can even see there's a gap in here. Those are a nightmare. I spent some money trying to get those right, and they still aren't right. So what I do on these a lot of times, whenever I have an axle that's too wide, and you're going to see what I mean in just a moment, go ahead and put my axle in. You can drill those holes out if they're too tight. And then the hole in the wheel is actually nice, and it's the proper size right out of the gate. Oops, that was sloppy. Holy cow. Got a little carried away there. This is Formula 560 canopy glue. If you're not familiar with that, I like it for specific purposes, especially around clear glass, because it does not leave a fog like the other glue that I prefer to use. And it just works really well. So I've already resized this axle before we got together, just so I wouldn't spend time ciphering while you guys are watching. So you can already see that's too wide. And I want that fender to, or want the wheels to go right out to the edge of the fender. That's too wide. And I got all that play in here. I don't want it being sloppy in there. So what are we going to do about that? You can make a spacer really easy. And what I've been doing is I go to microfasteners.com and I buy these little washers. And here's the part number right here, FWS01. And they're like $3 for 100 of them. I mean, they're almost free at that price. And just so you know, I live in the middle of nowhere and there is not a hobby shop for 200 miles. So I'm ordering virtually everything I use in. So I'm just using these washers as a spacer. I'm going to start with 4 and see how that looks. I'm going to put this wheel on and see if I have about the same amount of space on each side of the axle housing. Looks about right. We're going to do 4 on that side and see what we get. And I use these washers quite a bit because on the diecast models I work on, it seems like the manufacturer leaves a lot of play. They're just sloppy. The axles are sloppy on the diecast, and I don't like it. And the wheelbase isn't accurate compared to what it would be in real life. And we'll take a look at that quick. Oh, looks like I could do one more on either side. Okay. Well, just so I'll go ahead and tidy that up here in a little bit. I don't want to spend too much time just kind of working out the mechanics of it while you guys are watching, because you kind of get the idea. Unless, of course, you want to see that, then just stop me and I'll do it. But what I like to do is put the wheels on first. So the wheels are on the chassis, and then I can begin dry fitting all the other parts on. And if by any chance you feel an obstruction inside that rim, just get you a 16th inch bit, which I'm grabbing. And by hand, you can just kind of clean that hole out. Sometimes there might be a piece of obstruction in there. No worries. Now you got it. Now what I like to do is dry fit my bed on the chassis. You'll notice that it sets really low. No worries. We can use any kind of spacer. This is just styrene plastic I had left over from another project. So you can use any kind of styrene plastic or balsa wood or whatever happens to be in your shop and make you a little shim, which is what I'll do now. And you can be as clean and neat and dainty as you like, or you can kind of wing it like I just did. And then you can dry fit your chassis. I tell my people, anytime I'm teaching a lesson online, I do a lot of Facebook Live videos, and I teach people dry fit, dry fit, dry fit. Make sure everything is just the way you want it, and then you add glue. So that's what we're doing here. We're just practicing what we preach. Now, this particular client that's commissioned this rig, he is never going to roll this across. I mean, it's going to sit in a curio cabinet, and then all of his employees and the people that come to visit him are going to ooh and ah, and they might pull it out of a cabinet and look at it. But basically, it's never going to roll. But the other people that I'm teaching how to do this, they want it to roll. So here you can see there's just enough gap between the bottom of that fender and the top of the tire that now if you want it to roll, guess what? It's going to roll. And then, of course, you could come back and paint this plastic. You could paint it black. You could paint it silver, whatever you wanted. That way it doesn't look brown when you turn it over. Okay, so that's kind of how we're going to go about that. And then let's talk about the windscreen for this. So I've already put one in here. And there it is. Okay, I'm going to set that right there. What did I use for that? This is a clamshell for another die-cast model that I purchased and put on for another guy. And all I did was I cut a chunk of that out right there. And then cut it some more and cut it some more until it fits in here nice and tidy. Now this was a little tedious. Seemed like the first one went better than the second one, which is this one. So basically you're just dry fitting it until you get it to fit in that space nice and clean. And this almost drove me to drinking a little bit ago. Luckily I had a cherry Coke, so we were in good shape. So you can see it's not a perfect fit there. You could spend quite a bit of time getting this to be just perfect, as you wish. This is, again, where canopy glue really shines. If you were to use, this is my other go-to. I have two glues in the shop. This stuff right here and this stuff. And this will leave a glue, this will haze, this will leave a fog over your windscreen. And it just looks exactly the way I describe it, a fog. It just kind of masks over your, it just looks like crap. You get a white film over the inside of your windscreen. That's not cool. So a guy recommended I try this, and that solved my problem. So you can see right there, we've got it. Actually, I'm going to go to the other one because it fits just a little bit better, so I'm not fighting it while you guys are watching. This one fit just a lot better. This is just dry fit. It's just setting in there. Whenever I'm working with dainty pieces, I'm sure a lot of you guys do this as well. I like to take my glue and put it on the edge of my knife or any sharp instrument or whatever allows you to put it right where you want it. And then I will just kind of gingerly add that in. Just like so. And then I'll do that on the front a little bit as well, and maybe even the side. You don't need a whole lot of it. I mean, because again, we're not actually driving this, so there's no pressure on it, right? But I don't want it to fall off down the road, or maybe it ages and maybe the glue gets brittle. I've never had that happen before, but you never know. And then we can begin as soon as this is dry. The interior, I just painted this generic gray out of the shop, and then of course you could add all the detail in there that you would want. This does fit pretty snug. This piece was designed to touch the bottom right here of the inside of that hood. So you got to cut that windscreen so it doesn't interfere with this little notch that lets that rest. So this entire interior is flush with the bottom of the cab. Then we'll dry fit it over here and see how we're getting along. Now, immediately you can see it looks good over the back axles, but we have a problem. And what we'll do next time, because I think we've already bumped up against our 15-minute window, we will go ahead and stretch that frame. There's two ways to stretch these frames. There's an easy way and a hard way. And I'll show you the easy way. And then of course, and I shouldn't say it's the hard way, it's a different way. But one involves using like styrene or brass channel where you can make your cut in the frame. Then you'd use that channel iron to stretch this out to the desired length. Or the cheater's way is you would just cut this frame in your desired spot, preferably so it's like back here, like, you know, clear back here. You would cut that frame right back here, glue this part of your rear end to this service bed, and then this extra part you'd stretch out to where the cab butts up against the back of that service bed. And then you would just glue the frame to the bottom of the service bed. That is the easiest way to do it and the fastest way. And for a lot of clients, especially like this guy, I will do it that way because, again, it's going to sit in a curio cabinet and it will never move from that spot. Unless, of course, he's got his buddies over and they're having a cold one, say, hey, let's take a look at those. And they pull them out and take a look. So that's kind of that's a really rough and dirty description of how that's going to go together. While you guys are sleeping, I will go ahead and I'm going to do a couple of things here and finish one. So if we don't get it done next week, at least we'll have one completely done and you can see how the rest will come together. Okay. And I turned off my air conditioner in here and it is warming up. So if I'm sweating, it's not because I'm nervous. It's just because it's hot in here. It's 85. Holy smokes. One thing about Kansas, it's either cold or it's hot. We don't catch much of a spring.